10 an address in a nightmare. The small group crossed the park at Kadak. It was 5 in the evening, and the sun was setting behind the tips of the trees. "Aren't you cold, Eva?" asked Odd. "You haven't closed your jacket." "I'm used to it," the young girl replied with a smile. "I thought you came from California where it's really hot." Jeremy waved to them to keep quiet. At this time, the park was deserted, but it was impossible to be truly sure. And none must ever know of the existence of the secret passage. They turned towards the hermitage until the back of the villa was no longer visible between the snow-covered trees. Then, Jeremy indicated a point on the ground where the snow was finer. "We're here," he said. "Help me dig it out." Odd came forward with confidence. He was ready to do anything to impress Eva. He kneeled down in the snow and started to scratch at full speed with his fingers. "Hey, watch it," cried Ulrich, being hit with ice crystals square in the face. Yumi and Aelita burst out laughing. Finally, Odd cleared off a manhole cover from under the snow. "Come on, we're going down now." Jeremy gave his friend a suspicious look. "What do you mean we're going down?" "Odd, shouldn't you go back to your dorm? You're still being punished, right?" Jim left to go sleep in his room, so for me, the path is clear. "All right then, let's go," replied Yumi and Ulrich while sliding off the manhole cover. Everyone entered the tunnel and guided Eva towards the runoff canals. A foul smell took them by the throat, and from time to time, a rat would run in front of them, flicking its horrible pink tail. Odd slyly observed Eva. She didn't seem very surprised by this repugnant show. America must be a strange country if a girl doesn't make a fuss about entering a sewer with such a horrible odor and with rats everywhere. Even Yumi seemed quite fearful the first time around. As soon as they climbed up to the iron bridge, Odd put a hand on Eva's shoulder. "Isn't it spectacular? Look at all the snow there is on the roof of the factory. And hope it doesn't fall on us from above," responded Yumi, pointing out the danger panels hung on the doorway that closed off the route behind them. "Didn't you ever wonder if these panels were true? They just serve to scare off intruders." Jeremy reassured her. "Quick, let's go inside, because it's freezing out here." They gave Eva a tour of the factory and each of its 3 underground floors. The young girl looked all around calmly and walked confidently as if she had already been there millions of times. When they arrived at the supercomputer room, Jeremy took a seat and pointed to the metallic circle. "This is a holographic projector," he explained. "And this structure here above it projects an image in 3D of Lyoko, with a complete layout of the places. This is how I can see the exact position of my friends in X.A.N.A.'s monsters." "X.A.N.A.?" asked Eva immediately. "Yes. Well it's a long story. I discovered this place myself by coincidence. I was curious, so I turned on the supercomputer. This is how I discovered that it gave life to a virtual world, Lyoko, and that in this world, there was a wonderful, little elf." Aelita blushed, pinched him, then murmured, "That was me," but Aelita wasn't the only inhabitant on Lyoko, Jeremy continued. "There was also Xana, a devious being who had the means to control monsters. But most notably, Xana was so powerful that he could use particular places on Lyoko, like the towers, to access our world through electrical appliances and cause irreparable damage. This is why Ulrich, Odd and I started to use the scanners to enter Lyoko. We became cybernetic warriors. We could battle X.A.N.A. Yumi added. And they managed to free me from Lyoko, Aelita continued. And in doing so, helped me become a normal girl again, and then, we continued our struggle up until we destroyed Xana for good, concluded Odd. And we shut down the supercomputer." Eva asked with a little smile, "But then, this Xana wasn't very strong if kids like you managed to battle him." "Exactly," Odd replied. "In the end, he was only a stupid computer program." Jeremy glared at him and explained to Eva, "In reality, it wasn't so easy, because without Professor Hopper, Aelita's father, an inventor of Lyoko, we would never have succeeded. And Xana caused us a lot of concern. Once, he even possessed one of our friends, William Dunbar, and transformed him into a monster." "You mean that he can take control of human beings?" Eva let out, stunned. "He can indeed when he activates the towers," answered Yumi. "But fortunately, we are always aware of it." This time, Eva was no longer smiling. Yumi sprawled out on Aelita's bed, then settled in close to her. Jeremy also sat by their side. "Did you see Eva's face?" exclaimed Yumi. "Well, put yourself in her place," Jeremy explained. "In barely an hour, we had her see the factory and gave her a super twisted summary of all our adventures. It's normal that she'd be overwhelmed, don't you think?" "Yes, maybe," responded Yumi pensively. Aelita decided to change the subject. "By the way, what are we going to do with the file that we found in the principal's desk?" "Hey, Jeremy. There must definitely be another way to decipher the codes, what do you think?" He picked up the envelope and started to leaf through the pages. "It's not so simple," he announced. "Look, Hopix is a very low-level programming language. It could practically serve as an instruction manual for a household electrical appliance, and," he observed the face of his two friends and smiled, "well, it's difficult to know what the program will do once it's run. And the only way to try it out would be to turn on the supercomputer, which is out of the question." Suddenly, while leafing past a page, Jeremy stopped abruptly. He dropped the page and, with trembling hands, showed the girls the small piece of yellowed paper that he had just found. Yumi and Aelita moved in closer to him. "It's an address." "In Brussels," Aelita said. "It's Hertz's handwriting," explained the young boy. "The paper was hidden in the file, but it was so small that I didn't notice it." "In your opinion, what does it mean?" asked Yumi. They looked at it, perplexed. "No idea," sighed Jeremy. "All right." Yumi spoke. "If this piece of paper was in there, it wasn't by chance. It definitely has something to do with these papers and the professor, don't you think? We should go verify it." "It's Friday." Yumi remembered. "Ulrich and me could leave tomorrow morning. I'll tell my parents that I'm staying at Kadik this weekend with a friend, and take a trip all alone to Brussels," replied Jeremy. "To another country? Come on, Yumi, remember how that went the last time." Indeed, the day before the end of Christmas break, the small group crossed half of France to research a mysterious man, Philippe Brillet. He was the one who revealed the existence of the secret room in the Hermitage. But there was a big stumbling block on their return home. An overzealous ticket inspector called the police, because the travelers were unaccompanied minors. It was a bad adventure. Yumi exhaled, "We'll be extra careful. And besides, it's only 2 hours by train. It'll be fine." "But what are you hoping to find?" insisted Jeremy. "The first time we found the secret room, we could make an important discovery, who knows?" During the evening, Ulrich patiently listened to Yumi in the lunchroom. Then, he said, "A weekend, you and me, the two of us." "Yes." "In Brussels?" "Yes." Ulrich smiled while thinking about the special words "you and I are more than just friends" that he had held on to several days before. "I'm totally down with that," he exclaimed, satisfied. Odd, who was finishing eating his second chicken escalope, mumbled with his mouth full, "Pfft, it's not fair. I wanna go too." "Hey, first of all, you're being punished," Ulrich reminded him. "I'm sorry, but only us two should go, Yumi and me. We're the only ones who look older than our age." Ulrich was in heaven. And Yumi also seemed happy. Ulrich stood up and said, "Okay. Let me just phone my parents. I haven't spoken to them in a long time, and if they call the school tomorrow when I'm not there, I'll be caught. If I call them tonight, they'll leave me in peace for 3 or 4 days." He left the lunchroom, greeted Jim who was waiting for Odd in the hallway to take him back to his room, then he headed towards the deserted park. The schoolboy didn't have a jacket, and the cold was intense. He was dying of impatience. A trip with Yumi. An adventure alone with her. What more could he dream of? He grabbed his phone and called home. "Hello, Dad? It's me, Ulrich." On the other end of the line, the voice was blunt. Father and son hadn't spoken for a week, and the man seemed angry. The atmosphere at home seemed to get worse and worse. "Ah, Ulrich. Are you doing well at school? Did you get any bad grades?" The schoolboy sensed the anger growing. His father would truly never change, school and grades. Nothing else would interest him. "Normal," he responded. "What do you mean by normal?" his father retorted. "Did you get any bad grades, yes or no?" "Normal grades, Dad." "You mean normal like your inability to get a good grade?" Ulrich heard his mother start to holler, "Leave him alone." Don't you get that you're getting on his back too much? I'm not getting on anyone's back, cried her husband, bursting their eardrums. It's my right to know if... Dad, stop, sighed Ulrich. Everything's fine. Period. His parents had already stopped listening to him. It's your fault if he never calls, accused his mother. It's your fault if our son never does anything, responded his father. Ulrich listened to their worsening argument in silence. He heard the noise of chairs, then a fist slamming down on the table. He sighed and hung up without saying goodbye. After this joyous family discussion, his parents wouldn't be calling him with anything new for a good amount of time. At least he could leave in peace. Lyoko. This time, Aelita was in the forest sector. She was surrounded by immense trees, all identical, pointing towards the yellow sky. Not a rustle of leaves, nor the slightest breeze. She had retaken her elf form and felt completely disoriented, like each time she traveled from the real world to the virtual one. She turned around and saw the Scyphozoa, the monster of Xana that resembled a gigantic transparent cone and was made of glass and metal. Its slimy, pink hair was floating inside of the cone and was partly hidden by the eye of Xana. There were also its tentacles, moving smoothly through the air. Aelita started to run. As the Scyphozoa was the most dangerous creature their enemy had at his command, it aspired to take her memories. The young girl didn't want to lose her memory again. She rushed between the tentacles, but the humming of the Scyphozoa transformed into a muffled growl. While continuing to run, Aelita threw a glance behind her. The monster had transformed into a dog, an enormous hound, with a gaping mouth and fangs stained with blood. It soon went after her. It was now simply a matter of seconds. Aelita didn't notice that the ground was suddenly disappearing under her feet, transforming into a pool of water the same ochre color as the sky. She fell, screaming. She opened her eyes wide. She had had a nightmare again. The same pajamas were on her, covered in mud, and smelling of the same repugnant odor of the sewers. But she wasn't in the sewers. This time, she was lying down under a skylight on a cement floor. The light was coming from just above her and left the rest of the tunnel in darkness. She stood up, trembling, and took several steps. Light appeared in front of her feet and vanished behind her. She continued to walk. Was this still a dream or was this reality? Had she sleepwalked again? Slowly, the tunnel shrunk, the walls became square, and the young girl recognized the place, the Hermitage. While she was sleeping, she had actually snuck into the secret passage at Kadak that passed through the sewers and arrived at the Hermitage. But why did she do that? And why were the dogs that attacked Kiwi on the side of X.A.N.A.S monsters in her dreams? Aelita felt that something was eluding her. She stopped and reflected. To head for the Hermitage at night alone wasn't a good idea, especially if the mysterious man who had assaulted Odd's father was around in the area. It would be better to go back to sleep in the safety of her own bed. She thought of her past and figured that she should first speak with Richard. When Ulrich and Yumi got off the train at Brussels, they were swallowed by a wave of people. The lobby was gigantic, all in marble and glass. Businessmen were coming and going in suits and ties, armed with mobile phones and leather briefcases. Brussels was giving off an atmosphere of a very dynamic city. 11. A monster at Yumi's house. You've already been here? Ulrich asked. Yes, several times. Perfect, because I've never stepped foot here. What are we doing? I'd say breakfast first, Yumi proposed. Then afterwards, we take the metro to find this road. What was it called, again? Rue Camille Lemonnier? Perfect. They piled onto the bench in the station bistro and had 2 delicious croissants. Then, they embarked on the metro. After having carefully studied the timetable, 2 changeovers, yellow line, then green line. While they were trying to get a grip on the map, Ulrich almost lost sight of Yumi, pushed by a crowd of businessmen vigorously fighting their way along the platform. He grabbed her by an arm and breathed, "This whole place is crazy. Completely crazy." "It's normal," his friend responded. "This is currently the headquarters of the European Commission." After finishing their voyage, squashed together like sardines, the 2 friends walked hand in hand down the large city roads. The crowd seemed to have dispersed and they could finally breathe the quiet and serene air, up to the point that Ulrich almost forgot that they were making this trip to help Aelita. It was like a holiday, for him and Yumi. Just the 2 of them, in a splendid city. Could he ever ask for more? Rue Lemonnier was an ordinary road with wide footpaths lined with trees and beautiful buildings. The building they were looking for dated back to before the war, with a white, broken facade, and high windows. And on the side, there was an intercom with several doorbells. "What name is written on the paper?" Yumi asked. "Madame Lassalle," Ulrich responded. "She could be a friend of Professor Hertz." "Lassalle, there it is!" Yumi exclaimed when she spotted the name on the intercom. "Let's ring it." No response. The young girl rang again, still no response. "Try another doorbell," Ulrich proposed. They tried all of them, in vain. "What bad luck," Yumi muttered. "Hey, you kids," a voice called to them. They turned around. A small old man with a funny hat came towards them, pushing an old red bicycle. "Sorry," Yumi asked him, "are you talking to us?" "Yes," responded the man while walking tiny steps up to the intercom. "It's useless to ring, nobody will respond." "Why is that?" Ulrich wondered while looking at the long list of names. "All these people live here, don't they?" "We're looking for this lady, Madame Lassalle." "Young man," the old man smiled, "I've lived on this road since 1936. I saw Rue Lemonnier be bombed and reduced to cinders during the war. And I can say with complete certainty that nobody has ever lived in this building. It belonged to the government before. Then after the war, it was bought by an American company. But nobody has ever come to live or even work here, except for a few short weeks, but a property like this must be worth a fortune." Yumi cried, stupefied. "You can say that, young lady, but," the old man's voice dropped in pitch and confided, "in my opinion, it wasn't a company that bought it, but rather the Secret Service. As far as I know, at least." "The Secret Service," Ulrich repeated, not able to believe his ears. I know. You're undoubtedly thinking of James Bond or some other agent like that, but I'm telling you, kids, that the Secret Service really exists. And believe me, they were bustling with activity during the war. Thank you for coming to talk to us, sir," Yumi responded, smiling. "No problem at all. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to someone now and then." Ulrich laughed as he watched the old man leave. That poor man was a little shaken, wasn't he? Maybe, but in any case, he was right, nobody responded. "So, what do we do now?" The Café au Lait was a modern café, with a skinny black counter, and some small tables. Aelita arrived slightly late and found Richard already seated, his palm computer on the table next to a cup of hot tea. He seemed wiped out. "Have you been waiting long?" she asked. "I had a few problems leaving Caddick." "Don't worry," he responded with a smile. "Are you having anything to drink?" Aelita ordered a hot chocolate and sat next to Richard, in a way that allowed her to see the screen of his palm computer. It still showed the famous Hopix codes. Were they the same ones they found in Professor Hertz's dossier? Or were they part of the same program? She had to remember to ask Jeremy about it. While she was concentrating on the screen, Richard stared at her. Then, he put his hand on hers and said, "Can I ask you why you wanted to see me?" "I thought it was the least I could do," she justified. "After all, the other night must have been a real shock for you. I mean, you were expecting to find a girl about your age. Instead of that, I still can't believe that you're her. The Aelita that I knew, I mean. You're certainly identical, but..." "No, it's impossible," he continued in a lower voice. "We all grow up." "I've gone mad," Aelita squeezed the young man's fingers. "You're right, Richard, I really am Aelita, but I haven't grown up. I'd love to tell you everything, but I'm still not sure if I can fully trust you. I just ask you to understand. I'm scared." The moment had come to explain to Richard why she had come to see him. During the Christmas holidays, for reasons she hadn't yet understood, Aelita had a bout of amnesia and all her memories of Lyoko had disappeared. Jeremy and the others had patiently helped her to recover the memories thanks to a video diary in which they recounted everything that happened since the young student had discovered the abandoned factory. But before that, the girl had no memory of the period in which she lived in the Hermitage with her father or was in the same class as Richard at Caddick Academy. She didn't even remember the face of her mother, Anthea. Richard, however, could give her a hand in that area. The young man was happy to tell her everything. He started by talking about their class and teachers. Aelita and Richard were the best of friends, like she was now with Jeremy. But the young man reminded her of a number of details: the long afternoons Hopper spent helping them with their homework in the large lounge room in the Hermitage, school excursions, their love of life. "Back then, you were a really weird girl," Richard said. "Sometimes, you'd disappear for entire afternoons, with no explanation. You told me that you were working with your father, but that it was a top-secret project and you couldn't tell anyone about it, not even me. And then, during the last year of school that we spent together, you started to visit a new friend. You called him Mr. X. You said that he was very kind and very lonely, and that you had to help him discover his purpose in the world. When you talked about him, your eyes would shine. I was crazy in love with you myself and very jealous. I imagined that this Mr. X was a young foreigner that you had fallen completely in love with. And you had much less time to play with me. And then your visits to Mr. X became more and more frequent, and for some time, your father stopped coming to classes, and so did you. Up to the point where, one sad day, you disappeared. We had a history test and we had studied together. I was waiting for you but you never came. That afternoon, I ran to the Hermitage, but I found the doors and windows locked. Then, I never saw you again, never again, until the other night. It was June 6, 1994, the day when Hopper had finished his work on the Lyoko project and fled into the virtual world, taking his daughter with him. And he shut the supercomputer down, making it remain inactive for several years, until Jeremy's arrival. Aelita regarded Richard, whose eyes became clouded. On his Palm computer's screen, the Hopix codes were still streaming. Someone had set them off like an alarm signal to guide Richard to the Hermitage to help them. Her father thought that Richard was the right person to look after her in difficult moments. Aelita agreed completely, and guessed that she could trust him. She began to speak to him about Lyoko. Hiroki Ishiyama had been awake for 2 hours. He was lying down in his room, watching a cartoon on television for the umpteenth time. He now knew it by heart. During the week, his sister Yumi spent all her days at school, but on the weekends, they were usually together and she played with him. But today, he was alone. His parents were sleeping in and Kiwi, since he was injured, slept from morning till night. Hiroki was bored. Suddenly, the little boy heard the dog bark downstairs. He seemed angry. Several seconds later, Hiroki raised his head, because the growls became louder, almost terrorist. The dog's barking increased, then nothing. Hiroki leapt up and approached his bedroom door, still closed. The house was quiet, maybe a little too quiet. He opened the door without making a noise and stayed behind it, ears open. There were footsteps, then a noise of heavy shoes on the staircase. It wasn't his parents, they had their shoes off. Nobody could enter a Japanese house with shoes on their feet, except for a burglar. Hiroki held his breath and didn't move a muscle. The footsteps continued up the steps and the stranger walked along the hallway, passing by Yumi's room as well as his, and then headed to their parents' room. The young boy heard a voice saying, "Oh, but you don't remember me." Hiroki heard his mother let out a small, frightened cry, then nothing. Distraught, he exited his room and down the hall he saw a tall silhouette wrapped in a coat. Electric wires ran down his long, gloved fingers, relayed to Hiroki's parents' heads. The poor adults were still in their pajamas, and seemed unconscious. Hiroki didn't know if it was a man or a monster, but either way he was too small to confront him alone. He needed help. He discreetly headed to the staircase. In the living room, Kiwi was unmoving in his basket, but still breathing. The mysterious man had made him go to sleep. Yumi's brother slipped his shoes on, grabbed the small dog, then fled. But who could he call? And who could help him? Odd had just hung up the phone. His mother had called him to say that his father was doing better. He had now been discharged from the hospital and had come home. He had just gone back to bed when he heard knocking at his door. It was Yumi's little brother. He was holding Kiwi in his arms, and seemed terrified. "Hiroki!" Odd cried, while the dog licked his face. "What are you doing here? Hey, you shouldn't have brought him here." "And, Jim," he said, scrutinizing the hallway. Luckily, nobody was around. Hiroki jumped from one foot to the other, then in a desperate voice he said, "Odd, I need help. A monster took my parents." "Speak more quietly," Odd replied. "And explain to me what happened." The little boy managed to babble out somewhat of an explanation. Odd contemplated the story. Yumi's brother wasn't the kind of person to invent such crazy stories. And what he recounted seemed strangely like what happened to his own father earlier. "Let's go find Jeremy and we'll run over to your place," Odd proposed. "But I want to see my sister," the child protested. "Where is she?" "It's a long story, Hiraki. Just trust me and come on." The little genius was in his room, concentrating on Waldo Schaefer's dossier. Odd and Hiraki burst in, and Odd summarized the situation in 2 words. While the boys headed down the hallway once more, Jeremy's phone rang. It was Ulrich calling from Brussels. "What did Jeremy say?" Yumi asked, once the conversation had ended. "He suggested we take some photos of the lock and send them to him," Ulrich responded. "This afternoon or tonight. He'll explain what tools we need to buy and how to pick the lock." "Pick it," the young girl protested. "But that's illegal. This time, we're risking ending up in prison for good. If it really is a building belonging to secret agents, you'd have to think that there are cameras and microphones hidden in it. And," Ulrich interrupted, smiling, "and especially, that means we'll have to stay the night here. And I don't believe that minors can book a hotel room. That's not a problem." Yumi responded. "I already told you that I often come to Brussels. A friend of my mother lives here, a very nice woman. I'm sure that she'll welcome us and won't say anything to my parents." "That's perfect then," Ulrich cried. "So we'll take a couple of photos of this lock, then we'll make the most of our day." This agenda seemed to please the 2 adventuring teens. Arriving at his house, Hiraki slowly put the key into the lock and signaled to Odd and Jeremy not to talk. The students followed him, taking their shoes off. Hiraki then silently placed Kiwi on the couch in the living room. "Can I do something for you?" Hiraki's mother asked as she exited the kitchen, looking very elegant. The boy also saw his father, also dressed elegantly, in a vest and cravat. Jeremy wrung his hands together while thinking of something intelligent to say. "Can I do something for you?" she repeated with a large smile. "Mummy, Mummy!" Hiraki cried, jumping to hug her neck. "Are you okay?" "I'm doing very well. Can I do something for you?" Jeremy and Odd timidly greeted Mr. Ishiyama, who responded with a wan smile, eyes vague. "If you don't need anything, I'm going back to the kitchen," Yumi's mother announced in a monotone voice. The boys found themselves alone in the living room, perplexed. "I didn't lie," Hiraki said. "There really was a monster." "I don't doubt that," Jeremy responded, suspicious. "In fact, haven't you noticed anything strange?" His companions shook their heads. Then he explained, "Hiraki, it seems that your parents didn't recognize you, and they didn't even ask us for news about Yumi." As if they were completely confused, the boy nodded. "They're the same symptoms my father had." Odd sighed. "Memory loss and saying strange things. Let's go have a look around," Hiraki proposed. "In the state my parents are in, they won't even notice." They climbed the stairs and entered the parents' room. The bed was made, the floor clean and shiny. They observed the smallest corners, even under the bed. Not a speck of dust nor muddy shoe prints. The young boys quickly inspected Yumi and Hiraki's rooms, but in both of them, everything was still where it had been. "Let's have a look at the garden," Odd proposed. They said goodbye to Mr. and Mrs. Ishiyama, then left. Kiwi followed them, reeling. "Hiraki," Jeremy asked, "try to tell me everything you know about this man who looked like a monster in precise detail." Hiraki closed his eyes to concentrate better, then detailed the tall silhouette he had seen in a dark coat and gloves with cables on them. Kiwi barked, he recounted. Then, he fell asleep all of a sudden. The man must have used a sleeping pill. He must have been prepared to come to the house. Odd added. Suddenly, Kiwi's growls stopped them. The dog sniffed the grass in the garden and growled, scared. The young boys approached and saw a shoe print, deeply rooted in the soil. It was undoubtedly a large shoe with a thick sole. Then, to the side, troubling canine paw prints. 12.
Looks like the mystery is running deeper. And let's hope Yumi or find what they're looking for. And seeing more people are following to the mysterious man's evil tactic. Let's hope that they find out who's the culprit and Let's see if they'll pull through. I'm actually curious to see if they're gonna reactivate the supercomputer. Because without the supercomputer, they can't really do anything without the program running on it. Anyway, let's see what happens in the next episode. Leave a like, comment for more, and let's see how well it does in the next episode. So, see ya everyone.